financing your education, etc. So to begin, I'm just going to tell you a little bit of basic about the U.S. Legal system in the government, just to kind of give you a bit of overview on how our system is set up. Our Constitution sets up three branches of government. We have a legislative branch, a judicial branch, and an executive branch. One of the things the Constitution doesn't do that is very interesting to foreign lawyers is say anything about state governments. And the reason that it doesn't set up the state governments is that at the time the Constitution sets up the federal government, the states already existed. So the way that the Constitution works is that it sets up a federal government of limited power, and all the powers not given to the federal government stay with the states. Our legislative branch is made up of two houses, a House of Representatives and a Senate. It has the power to enact laws, but only in certain situations. So it's, one of the themes that we'll see with this federal government is that it's a government of limited powers. Our federal Congress cannot make laws in any situation it wants, only in certain situations. The Senate has a same representation for every state in the United States. Every state gets 2 senators, but our House of Representatives is proportional representation according to population. So as you can see from this map, this shows the apportionment of U.S. House of Representatives based on the 2010 census. The different colors show which states either gained or lost seats or stayed the same. So in a state like California, where Pepperdine Law School is located, they have many, many representatives in the House of Representatives. They have 53. New York has 27. North Carolina has 13. The lonely states of Montana and Wyoming have only 1 representative in the House of Representatives. Our executive branch is our president, vice president, and everyone under them. The president has the power to appoint ambassadors, judges, public ministers, and most importantly, I think for your purposes, the appointment of judges in the United States. Federal judges are not elected. They're appointed by the president. They're confirmed with the advice and consent in the Senate. The advice and consent of the Senate. And that is one of the very important aspects of having an independent judiciary, which is an issue in many countries in the world. Having judges who are nominated rather than elected and who serve life terms is one way that many countries ensure an independent judiciary. The president has the power to veto legislation. So a veto is when the Congress passes a law, it goes up to the president signs it, and it becomes law. But the president can refuse to sign that law, and that's called a veto. One of the things that we'll see over and over again with the 3 branches of federal government is that the Constitution gives each branch certain powers, but then it will give another branch the ability to limit or check the power of the other 2 branches. So one example of that is that Congress makes law, but the president has the power to veto. Our judicial branch is our federal court system. The Constitution creates the Supreme Court and all lower courts as Congress deems fit to establish. Congress did establish a system of lower district courts and an intermediate level of appellate courts called the United States Courts of Appeal. They have limited jurisdiction. They can't hear all cases. You can't just file a lawsuit and get into federal court. You have to have one of 2 reasons. The 2 kinds of jurisdiction to get into federal court are subject matter jurisdiction and diversity jurisdiction. Subject matter jurisdiction simply means that the lawsuit is brought pursuant to a federal law or the U.S. Constitution. Diversity jurisdiction is when it is a lawsuit between citizens of 2 separate states in the United States. So if I am attending a recruitment event in California, like I was last month, and Sarah and I are, walking around in Santa Monica, and we get into an argument, we have a fight, and then I sue her, because she won. She could say to me, you know what? We don't want to have this trial in state court, right? Because a New Yorker in state court in California is probably not going to get a fair. We all know how Californians feel about New Yorkers, right? So you could say, you know what? We are citizens of different states. We should have this trial in federal court where there will be a fair trial. So that's what diversity jurisdiction is. Federal judges, as I said before, are nominated by the president and confirmed with the advice and consent of the Senate. Our federal court system is at there are three levels. There's the first instance court, which is the United States District Court. The United States Court of Appeals is an intermediate appellate court. And there's the United States Supreme Court, our court of last resort. Our federal system is broken up into 11 circuits at the appellate level, the intermediate appellate level. So the Ninth Circuit is the Court of Appeals that covers most of the western part of the United States. Where I'm from in New York, we have the Second Circuit. And within each circuit are many different districts. Most of the law that touches regular people in their everyday lives in the United States is state law. So property law, for example, when you buy or sell a home, that is governed by state law. If there is an accident, an automobile accident, that is tort law. Personal injury law, that is state law. Contract law, business law. Family law, if you get married and you need a marriage license, that is state law. And finally, there is federal criminal law, but most criminal law, the overwhelming majority of criminal law that affects regular people in the United States, is state law. There are some areas that are uniquely federal. Immigration, intellectual property, and bankruptcy are three examples of law that is exclusively federal. So it would be more accurate to say, it would not be accurate to say the law and legal system of the United States. It's more accurate to say that we have law and legal systems because there are so many different legal systems in the United States. So this is a good visual representation of the interaction between state and federal law in the United States. Federal powers are sort of like rocks in a container of water. They carve out, what they are, but the state law kind of fills in around it, right? So we are not a pure common law system in the United States. So we actually, for a common law system, if you come from a civil system, the U.S. has an awful lot of enacted law for a common law system. We have statutory law at both the state and federal level, as well as administrative law and regulations. But we also are a common law system, so we have case law, we have judge-made law. We have case law that simply builds on older cases, so there are areas of law that are only judge-made law, like tort law, for example. But then we have case law that interprets enacted law. So for example, if you had a statute that said no vehicles in the park on weekends, and you ride your bicycle into the park, and the police officer, grabs you and says, no, you're going to get a ticket because there's no vehicles in the park on the weekends. And you say, no, I'm riding a bicycle. A bicycle's not a vehicle. And he said, no, I say a bicycle's a vehicle, so you're getting a ticket. So you have to go and you pay your ticket, and then you appeal that decision to an appellate court. And on appeal, the only question is whether a bicycle is a vehicle. And the appellate judges say, you know what? No. That's not what this law was designed to prohibit. This law is about cars, not bicycles. We want to encourage people to ride their bicycles in the park. So that judge, that case, that decision from then on in the United States is a binding precedent, right? So everyone after that, every cyclist after that is going to remember you, because you paved the way to let them ride their bicycles in the park. So that would be an example of an opinion of judge-made law that has changed the meaning of an enacted law. So when you're doing legal research in a common law system, you're asking three questions. What kind of law is relevant to my situation? Is it enacted law? Is it statutory, regulatory, constitutional, case law? When? Because our body of law is always evolving, and because we have this system of precedent, stare decisis, you have to make sure that the case that you're using is still good law, that nothing has happened after that has changed the meaning of it. And finally, where? Cases decided in one jurisdiction are not binding on cases in other jurisdictions. So if you're in the Ninth Circuit in California, appellate opinions from the Second Circuit in New York are not mandatory authority on you. They're only relevant in the circuit where they're decided. I'll give you a very quick overview of our trial system before we talk about bar exams. The very first thing that happens in our trials is that we select a jury. We have a jury system in the United States, and unless you absolutely hate your job, you do not like when you get the envelope that says you have been summoned to serve on the jury. We invite everybody to serve on juries. There are not automatic exemptions for any kind of professionals. You get something in the mail. You have to show up at court. You are brought into a courtroom in batches of people, and at the federal level, judges, and at the state level, lawyers ask potential jurors whether they can decide cases impartially. And at the end of a process, a jury is impaneled. Lawyers make opening statements, which are prospective in nature. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today you will hear that. Throughout the trial, you will see. They then present their evidence. In the U.S., we have a preference for live evidence, the testimony of live witnesses over written evidence. So witnesses swear on a Bible or affirm to tell the truth. They are asked direct questions by their own attorneys and then, or by the party who called them. And then they are cross-examined by the other party. And at the end of the presentation of proof, lawyers make closing arguments that summarize the case. The judge charges the jury. The judge explains the relevant law for the case, tells them what the standard is for that particular case. The jury retires to a room to deliberate, and then they come back and render their verdict. So now that you have a very quick overview of the way that law in the U.S. works, now you really want to become licensed. In the U.S., licensing is state to state, so you have to be licensed in the state where you want to practice. It's administered by the judiciary, which is different in a way than it is here. Here it's by the Bar Association. In the U.S., bar associations are more, they deal with education and social type things, but in the U.S., it's the judiciary that licenses attorneys. A good source for bar licensing requirements is available on ncbex.org. It's the National Conference of Bar Examiners. When you're thinking about licensing in the U.S., you first ask, will the education that I've received qualify me to take a U.S. bar exam? And if it won't, could I do an LLM that would subsequently enable me to take a bar exam? The bar exam in the U.S. is given twice a year, and it's 2 days long, except for California, where it's 3. In addition to the bar exam, you usually have to take a test called the MPRE. That's an ethics exam. You have to go before a committee on character and fitness, where attorneys and people that, employers, people you've known, have to sign affidavits that say that you are morally fit to practice. People have to sort of vouch for you. And finally, in New York recently, we announced that all attorney applicants must do 50 hours of what we call pro bono work. Pro bono work is free legal work that is done for people who need it, for poor people. So all bar applicants in New York from now on have to do 50 hours of pro bono before they get a New York license. 31 of 50 states allow some foreign-trained lawyers to take their bar exam. The rules for this vary state to state, but 4 out of 5 foreign lawyers take New York's bar exam. And about 30% of everyone who's taken New York in the last 2 years has been foreign-trained. So it's sort of fast becoming a kind of a global credential. Whereas here in Seoul, I've been handed a lot of business cards that say admitted in Korea and New York. You do not have to go to school in the state where you want to take a bar exam. So much as I would love to tell you, you know what, if you want the New York bar, you have to come to New York. That's not true. And you can get, a very good legal education at many law schools and still take New York's bar exam. New York tests a wide variety of subjects that I won't go through all here, but it's a fairly comprehensive exam. The timeline for that is kind of important. They evaluate all foreign credentials on a case-by-case basis, and they take about 6 months to do that. So if you want to take the July bar exam, you have to submit all of your materials to them the October before that. And for the February exam, it's the May before. So now I will turn things over to Fiona, who will talk about the legal education.
Hi, I'm Fiona McCormick. I'm from Wake Forest School of Law. We've kind of done this a little bit backwards. Joe talked about the legal history, legal system, and how to license. Well, first of all, you have to actually be educated first. California, you can take the bar without technically having a law degree, but most states, in fact, 49 of the 50 states require it. So we're going to talk about legal education. So law schools usually sit within the universities. There are a few private ones, but the majority are actually within the universities. There are over 200 plus law schools in the US. So there is a lot of choices. Well, Alaska doesn't have a law school. So that's the only state that doesn't have one. There's approximately 141,000 law students, of which 47% are female. The big thing to look up when you're looking at law schools is looking versus regional versus the ABA accreditation. There are some law schools, mainly in California, that are regionally accredited. But we always suppose that you want to go to an American Bar Association, sorry, can't talk, an ABA-approved law school. So that's something to look for. So before you even apply, do you actually want to become a lawyer? And if so, where do you want to practice? I mean, if you want to practice in the UK, the US, Korea, you really should think about where you actually want to practice. Because that will determine where you want to go to law school. To become a lawyer in the UK, there's no point coming to the US, but if you really want to practice in the US, or even practice in Korea with a multinational firm, a US legal degree will help for that. So the second thing is think about, do you want to be something other than a lawyer? Is a lawyer exactly what you want to be, or is a JD a means to that end? Not everyone wants to be a practicing lawyer, but a JD or an LLM can actually help you to find another job that you might be interested in. And then the other thing we always ask people to consider is, if you're not sure that you want to go to law school right at this particular moment in time, consider working before you actually go to law school. Think about taking some time. This is not a race, it's a journey. So it's not a race to the end, but think about taking some time before you actually start law school. So the degrees, the way that legal education is offered in the States is three ways. Everyone's heard of the JD, LLM, and a Doctor of Jurisprudence. Those are the three typical ones. And I'm going to go through these into more detail in a minute now. Okay. No. Done? Okay. So, oh, you deleted them? Okay, so typically a JD is 3 years. It is a graduate level post-bachelor's degree. So it's becoming very similar to the Korean system, where you get an undergraduate degree first, which can be general, doesn't have to be a specific program. And then you get a 3-year postgraduate JD degree. Its program is designed to allow for practicing and licensing in the US. It allows you to take the bar in any state of the US. So the LLM, which is what a lot of our international students are interested in, it is a graduate level degree. It is designed for people who hold a first degree in law. It's a 1-year program. And there can be general or specialized programs. By general, I mean it's a general LLM in American law. So you're going to take American law classes, whereas a specialized program allows you to actually focus in a particular area, such as intellectual property, dispute resolution, criminal law. Those will allow you to actually become specialized and gain more knowledge in that particular area of law. Oh, I just took out the JD. We don't have a slide on the SJD, but the SJD is really designed for those people who are going to enter academia. It's 3 to 5 years in length. It follows most schools require you to have an LLM first. It's research-based. And by that, I mean you're not taking classes. What you're doing is actually you'll take two courses the first year, and then the rest of the time you're actually spending doing research in a particular area with a faculty member. So it's really designed if you want to specialize and publish in a particular area of law. We find that most people who are interested in that are going into academia. So how to choose a school? With over 200 law schools, there's a lot of choices there. So the first thing we say to look at is location. Think about where you want to be. Do you want to be in an urban environment, such as a big city? Do you want to be in a more rural environment? Or do you want to be in kind of a mixture of both? It could be a small city. But definitely look at the location. East Coast, West Coast, Northeast, the South. Think about that. Where in the US do you want to study? Then think about the reputation of the school and faculty. And that means not only thinking about rankings as people do, but thinking about the actual reputation of the school has internationally. Is the school known? Is it known in that particular area? I know that Pepperdine, for example, has a very known reputation in Korea for dispute resolution. So is the school known internationally for that particular area? And if you say, oh, I'm going to here, what do people think? And then also look at the faculty when you're looking at that. Look at if there's a particular faculty member that you're interested in. What kind of reputation do they have? Especially if you're taking classes, law classes here in Korea, and use the textbook that's written by an American professor. You know, think about looking at those professors, or talk to your professors for their recommendations too. So the other thing to look at is availability of clinical programs. The US places a lot of emphasis on practical legal education. By that I mean getting practical experience while you're in law school. There are many clinics that programs offer, which allow students to actually get experience working with clients. You're assigned clients and you will actually be working with them. I know for us that we have one in family law, and that allows you to actually be assigned a client. You will be working with the client in the particular issue with the supervision of a licensed attorney. Clinical programs are very, very important when you're looking at the schools. And then anything then is a special characteristic that is important to you. Again, it could be a specialization if you're looking for that. It could be a particular faculty member if you're looking for that, but something that is important to you. Then we say select a broad range of schools. Don't just focus on one or two, but select, I would say 5 to 6. 10 is a little excessive because you pay all the application fees, but a 5 to 6 is usually about right. Good ways to find a school is LLN Guide and then Peterson's. I always recommend people go to lsac.org. If you've not gone to lsac.org, that actually lists all the programs, both JDs and LLM. You are allowed to search on LSAC by program. You're allowed to search by region. So it gives you a really good reference point, and that is actually free. If you don't have an account with LSAC, that is free to set up. There are some charges that is involved in the application, but Sarah will discuss, that side of it a little bit more. Okay, yes, thank you. The CRS, if you sign up for an account with LSAC, what that does is enter you as a prospect into the database. That allows schools then to run a report, which allows us to contact you. So you'll start to receive information from schools, which is a great resource to get links to their website, to find out more about the programs, and actually to get the admissions directors' emails, so you can start contacting the schools directly. Because we always encourage you to contact the schools directly. Okay. What to expect in the classroom? It differs. It very differs per program. I can't say there's one typical LLM classroom or JD classroom. It really differs depending on the school. For a lot of programs, if you're a JD or an LLM, you'll actually be in classes together. So it's mixed classes. They're not separated. Now, a lot of times there may be a specific class that's separated, such as Introduction to U.S. Law or Legal Research and Writing. But the majority of other classes are with JDs, so you're getting that full interaction. There's a wide age range of students. Typically, law schools in the US like to seat a very diverse group of students. We typically look for students that range from ages as young as 17, 18, to as old as 50 to 52. So you will see a very wide group of students. You'll see males and females. I mean, you'll see mid-career people that have decided to go back to school to get a JD or an LLM. So you're going to see everything. So the Socratic method, that is very typical for law schools. And how that, I mean, that you will be assigned, for each course, you'll be assigned cases to read. And those pages can be 60 to 100 pages per course per night, depending on the professor. You are then blindly called upon, and this sounds a lot worse than what it really is. Joe's not shaking his head at this point. The professor then will start discussing the course and the cases, and you will be called upon. You will be asked questions, and you will be asked to discuss the case. You will be required to participate. Some professors are nice and tell you ahead of time. Some professors don't. It really depends on the professors. And the biggest thing about the Socratic method is you actually do get used to the reading. You do actually get used to being called on. And what you become to realize is that professors really want the participation. They expect the participation, and they enjoy that. They are learning. You're learning as much from your fellow students as you are from the professor itself. But also on that Socratic method, I also want to add, check with the program too, because not every program is the same. So you want to talk to the admissions people to ask them, is this the type of method you use? I would say in American law schools, typically we're known, and we really kind of pride ourselves on that our professors are approachable and accessible. Most schools will say they have an open door policy or a very low student to faculty student ratio. Professors in law schools want to talk to students. They like to talk to students. They want to engage them, and they want your opinions. So they're definitely trying to engage you and to get your opinions and to find out what you want, and to often if you're interested in their research particular area, then they want to engage you in that. So they're definitely approachable, and they're not you're not going to sit in a large lecture hall with 400 students typically and never know the professor. You will know them. They will stop you in the hallway. They will talk to you and answer your questions. And then the other thing that might be very different than a career in law school is that the entire course grade may be graded on a written final exam. Typically, at my law school, we have a lot of them have midterms and then final exams, so it's 2. Or there could be papers. But in some schools, it's all dependent on that final exam. And that's where your grade is going to be, which I think is sometimes very different, especially coming out of the undergraduate system. Okay. Joe talked about, can I practice law in the US? As Joe talked about, every state has its own licensing agreement, so I'm not going to go into much detail about that. I did just want to point out that some of the states that LLMs look at when they want to take a bar exam are typically New York, California, DC is another one, Virginia, Ohio, Illinois, and Tennessee. But as Joe said, the ncbex.org is a really good reference point of giving you the list of the states, what the requirements are, if they want prior practice, and the classes too, and the number of credits. Sarah. I'll let Sarah talk about the application process itself.
So then, just as introduction, my name is Sarah Gonzales. I'm Assistant Director at the Straus Institute over at Pepperdine University. In regards to the application process, that's what it is. It's a process. It's going through a system of steps to be able to submit materials towards the application, but it may seem daunting, but it's totally doable. And so applications will typically require a number of different deadlines. So check with the schools that you're applying for regarding whether or not they take rolling admissions, which means they are always receiving applications, or if they have strict deadlines on when they need to receive materials by. In addition, you will see a number of different schools that only start programs in the fall. So they only accept applications for fall starts. Or I'm seeing a number of other schools that will also accept applications for students to start in the spring. At Pepperdine, we also start in the summer. So again, check with the schools regarding their specific start times and then what their application deadlines are associated with that. When you're looking at applying for programs, some of the different components take time. So if you're applying for a JD program, of course, you're going to be required to take the LSAT exam. That takes time to prep for the exam, as well as taking it, and then if you want a couple times to take it a few times to raise your chances of getting in, then you want to be able to give yourself that lead time. Recommendations and transcripts don't take as much time as prepping for exams, but do require some foresight and some thoughts about who you're selecting, etc. In regards to the personal statement, that's one of the biggest questions I get from international students in regards to what is a PS statement or a personal statement? What should I be including? What should I address? So a lot of what I recommend for students in regards to what to include in that personal statement is tell us your story. Why are you applying to our program? And I want you to do your research. So whatever program you're applying for, do some research on that program and make a personal statement that specifically shows that you're motivated for their specific program. So why do you think that program will help you, in regards to your future career goals? What is your specific interest or experience within the legal field, as well as an opportunity to kind of show what kind of leadership skills or how you've been involved in the community, whether at your law school or internships or other such experiences. What I would not recommend you include in that personal statement. Sometimes I'll receive personal statements that are just basically a regurgitation or repetition of their CV or resume. If you're just going to talk about your experience, that's great, but I could look at the CV or resume for that information. So add a little bit more. It's great to talk about your experience, but it's because that's leading you here, or that's motivating you to do what. So connect the dots in regards to how that experience contributes to why you're applying for that program. Make sure that you, since you're taking the effort to cater that personal statement for that institution, that you proofread and you double check your work. Because there are several personal statements that I've received where it says, I will be a perfect student for your XYZ institution, and it's not Pepperdine. So make sure you put in the effort to double check your work, because then you'll probably receive a decision that you won't like. Because, we felt that you were a perfect student for that other university. So just make sure you proofread your work. Also, stay away from legal analysis. The personal statement is, again, an opportunity for you to tell your story. It's not an opportunity for you to demonstrate your English language proficiency or your knowledge or capability to write legal analysis. If you want to demonstrate that, then submit a supplemental statement as a writing sample, but that's not the personal statement is not the area for that. The personal statement is very personal. So that's where you, again, connect the dots in regards to telling your story and why this institution is the perfect institution for your career goals. So a lot of applications will require a series of different examinations. Being an international student, unless your first language is English, many institutions will require that you take some English proficiency test. So most schools will take the TOEFL or possibly the IELTS. There's a couple other exams like the Petersons out there, but again, check with the institution you're applying for and see which exams they will accept. Many schools will publicize their minimums in regards to the scores that they're looking for, but some won't. Many of the schools balance it with an English assessment exam with an interview. Typically, there'll be Skype unless we're in the area. So check with the schools regarding their requirements. And then the LSAT exam is another required exam only if you're applying for a JD program. Typically, LSAT programs do not require the LSAT, typically LLM programs do not require the LSAT, so don't put yourself through it unless you're applying for a JD program. So letters of recommendation. I always tell applicants to use letters of recommendation as an opportunity to connect with some of your mentors or people that you know in the field. Be strategic in who you choose to submit letters of recommendation on your behalf. So if you are trying to communicate to us that you're a studious student and that you've done well in school, well then pick a faculty member of a course that you've done well in that may be a similar area of the LLM program you're applying for. If you're trying to tell us that you've got some great work experience, then choose a supervisor that you've worked with an internship or some volunteer opportunity or an actual job. Don't just focus on their specific titles. So if you get the dean of your law school or someone with a wonderful title that submits a recommendation, but what they say about you isn't really giving us a lot of information, then it may be more helpful to choose someone a little bit lower that can give you a glowing letter of recommendation. So we look at the content in addition to the titles. So think about what you're trying to communicate to the admissions committee and not just focus on the title. Many law schools will, require that you do 2 or 3 or a certain number of letters of recommendation. Check with them because many schools will take more than the minimum. So if you wanted to give yourself a well-rounded application, then you've got people from all these different areas that can talk about your experience in those various areas. So as Joe had mentioned earlier, part of the bar requirements have that MPRE where it talks about character and fitness. Applications will have an element within it that asks that talk about character and fitness. No matter, you want to make sure that during that application program, no matter what's happened, you want to be transparent and honest. Not only will you get in trouble when it comes to sitting for the bar exam, if it's found that you weren't honest on that application, if the school finds out, they can actually dismiss you from the program if you weren't accurate on the application. So no matter what's happened, it's not the end of the world. Just be transparent and communicate with the school what's been going on. The Law School Admissions Council should be your best friend. The Law School Admissions Council is where you would go online for either the JD, you'll see on the left of the Future JD Student tab, and then the second tab being Future LLM Student tab. For those of you interested in JD programs, the Future JD Student tab is where you would go, and you would see an element where you could look up an ABA directory of all the different law schools, search by region area, search by all these different specializations or programs offered, as well as the online application process for JD programs. The LLM program, the same thing, but tab 2. So in tab 2, you'll be able to look up through the directory all the different programs, as well as go through the application process to apply. I want to be very specific and say that these two processes are different. So if you've submitted materials for a JD program, it will not easily transfer into the LLM. Typically, LSAC will like that you do a new one and you apply for the LLM program. So just be very careful in which one you create. Just to create an online system in LSAC is free to do part of the CRS system, but once you start using their services, like their document assembly services, which is the process where you submit your materials through LSAC, and then they would submit it to the 5, 6, 10 schools you're applying for. That costs money. Or if you use their evaluation service where you submit transcripts and then they write an evaluation of your transcript, that also costs money. And then if you're looking at applying for JD programs, LSAC has a specific website for international attorneys looking to apply for JD programs. So you'll find this under Future JD Students with this specific link. So for evaluation agencies, again, this is one of the components that can complicate an application for a JD or LLM program. Typically, schools who do not have someone on staff that will evaluate transcripts will require that you send them to an evaluation agency. LSAC is one of many evaluation agencies, but check with the school that you're applying for. Some schools will say that they will accept transcripts directly because they have someone on staff that does research and their job is to do transcript evaluation. Great, then you don't have to go through that other process. Other schools don't have that staff person, so they do require an evaluation agency. Some may say, oh yes, you can use as long as you can use any agency of your choice. Some will be very specific to using LSAC. In my opinion, I think it's to your benefit to use LSAC because that's all they do is law school transcripts. Some of the other agencies out there do a number of different transcripts there, but they're not specific to law, so their evaluation or translation of your grades may differ than the LSAC because that's their area of expertise. There's many different ways of funding your study in the U.S. I've divided them up in internal sources of funding and external sources of funding. So internal funding is typically sponsored by the university, and that may look like a fellowship, which may require a teaching assistantship or may require projects or some sort of work in return for the tuition. or university scholarships and grants, which may be standard. The other option are third-party organizations like the Fulbright organization if you're applying for external funding, as well as regional scholarships or subject-based. But the biggest part is look out for different deadlines. With the university applications, sometimes there may be a separate application, or if you write in your personal statement that you're looking for funding, maybe the university will consider you for scholarship at the point of application. But for external scholarship organizations, they will have different deadlines. Some of the most prestigious scholarships require applications 1 year in advance. So you would have to apply early on, go through their vetting process of interviews and applications and essays, etc., to be able to get those scholarships. But they can range from partial tuition to full tuition scholarships. So sometimes it's worth putting in the effort. Do you want to talk about your scholarships at SUNY? Talk about what you offer.
Yeah, just really quickly. So at SUNY Buffalo Law School, we have both need and merit-based scholarships. We typically award scholarships to about a third of our entering JD class each year. The deadline, as Sarah said, we have an earlier deadline than the application deadline for scholarships, and that's the case with a lot of schools. It's actually still pretty late. It's March 1st, but it's earlier than the admission deadline. There are all of the named scholarships that you can see here. We also have two types of merit-based scholarships for LLM students that we award. We have a Dean's Tuition Scholarship and a Faculty Research Scholar position, which allows LLM students to work for faculty on campus doing research. So it not only gives them some money, but it also allows them to cultivate a relationship with a member of the faculty.
So Wake is a private school, so we only offer merit-based scholarships. The JD, LLM, and our new Masters of Study in Law are all considered for scholarships. There is no application form. You're automatically considered at the time. For the LLM, it's based on GPA, experience, personal statement, and as a recommendation. I would say for the JD, it's based a lot on LSAT score. The majority of our students receive some form of scholarship. The amount really is dependent on what program you're going into, and if it's a JD, it is the LSAT. We have named scholarships. There's some additional information that's required for those, but the Dean of Admissions actually makes that determination, and that is usually done once you've been admitted to the program.
And then at Pepperdine, we have a number of different scholarships for the JD program. Again, on that magical LSAT score. You can get a Faculty Scholars Award that vary from partial all the way to full tuition with a stipend. So those are the top LSAT scores, as well as Dean Scholarships, Diversity Scholarships, and a Presidential Award. And then all of that is a balance of GPA with LSAT score, what you've been doing, et cetera, et cetera. The faculty one, where you get up to full tuition, a lot of it's GPA and LSAT score. For our dispute resolution programs, we have a fellowship program that offers about an average of $7,500, $8,000 in scholarship. And then this past year, we started 2 corporate-sponsored full tuition scholarships. We're working on adding more, but currently we have the Beijing Arbitration Commission sponsors 1 full tuition scholarship, and the GAMS, which is a dispute resolution organization in the U.S., also sponsors a full tuition scholarship. And so again, for external organizations, please look at their different deadlines, because it may be 1 year in advance. These are some of the many different external scholarships available, including the Fulbright program, which is run through this glorious building here in Korea, as well as some of these are the ones that are off our website, so some may be dispute resolution specific, but the Rotary Foundation is fairly general, and some are region specific. For reference, free, no matter if you go to Pepperdine or any other school, it's a free website that lists the different scholarships available. As I travel the world and find other scholarships, I just post them on our website. So it's a free reference, no matter what program you're going in. And then I'll have Joe talk a little bit, share a little bit about his programs over in Buffalo.
So now, just very quickly, we'll introduce you to each of our programs specifically. At SUNY Buffalo Law School, we have a lot of different ways that you can come participate in our community. From, JD, most of the students in our building are JD students. What you might be interested in is that we now have a 2-year JD program for foreign lawyers. So if you already have a first degree in law, you can come to my law school and do a JD in 2 years rather than 3. We also have a general LLM and a criminal law LLM. Because we're part of a large research university, the University of Buffalo, we have a lot of combined programs, JD MSW, JD MBA, et cetera. And if you are a senior scholar or a professional, you can come and do a postdoctoral fellowship, mid-career senior fellowship. So there are a lot of different ways to join our legal community. We have curricular concentrations and programs in many different areas, including civil litigation, criminal law, intellectual property, et cetera. There are also many opportunities for experiential learning, hands-on learning in our clinical programs, externships, clerkships with judges, practicums, and we have a New York City program in finance. We also have several international experiences, including a program in Thailand in January, and exchange relationships with schools in Glasgow and Barcelona. The law school enrollment is about 610, mostly JD students. The LM program is between 10 and 20 students a year, so that gives us a faculty to student ratio of about 10 to 1. Buffalo is on the border between the United States and Canada. So we're on the western part of New York State. We're close to Niagara Falls, if you've ever heard of that, 2 hours south of Toronto. There's a vibrant legal community in Buffalo. We have a federal court, state court, county court, a lot of law firms and government offices. But because we're the only law school in that part of New York, we have many alumni in the local legal community and many opportunities for students to participate in that. The cost of living in Buffalo is very low compared to the rest of the United States. We are New York State's public law school. Most of the law schools that you've probably heard of from New York are in fact private. So NYU, New York Law School, Cornell, Fordham, Brooklyn, Albany. These are all private law schools. CUNY is City University of New York. They are a public law school. We are SUNY, State University of New York. So we're part of UB, the University at Buffalo, which is a flagship research university in SUNY. And the law school is about 125 years old.
Okay, so like most law schools in the US, we offer JDs and we offer several joint degrees in the MBA. The Master's of Divinity is a very popular one, and the Master's of Religion. We offer a general American LLM program, which allows you to actually choose the classes that you want to choose. We offer an SJD, and as I said, that is mainly for people that are going into academia. We've recently started a Master's of Studies in Law, which is a 1-year program. It's designed for people who don't actually have a degree in law, but it allows you to actually take law classes. You'll actually be taking classes again with the LLMs and JDs. There are some specific classes regarding that. And then we also have visiting international researchers, which tend to come anywhere from 3 months to a year. And there's actually spending time at this law school doing research with a faculty member. Some program highlights. As I said, it's an American law. It allows you to choose the classes. It's 24 credits. It does satisfy the New York bar requirements for those students that are interested in taking the New York bar. We offer a faculty and student mentorship program. It's a thesis or seminar paper requirement. By that, Wake Forest placed a large emphasis on legal research, legal writing. So we actually require our LLM students to do legal research and writing class, and then actually an additional upper level writing requirement too. And I always say that one of the things about Wake is that we're small by tradition and design, meaning we don't make a big law school. We're about 500 law students, of which about 30 are LLM students, so it's fairly small. The law school was founded in 1894. It's recognized as one of the best values in the private law schools. It's a faculty ratio of about 10 to 1. Faculty is very friendly and responsive. It's in a great location. It's in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. which is close to major cities such as Charlotte and Raleigh, and then it's also close to the mountains and the coast of North Carolina. With that, I'll turn it over to Sarah.
So then at Pepperdine, we've got a number of different programs offered. With the JD program, we joint JD with the business program, Masters in Dispute Resolution, as well as the Masters in Public Policy. This year, we started our new accelerated 2-year JD program with our Certificate in Dispute Resolution. In addition to that, we have a number of different clinical programs and other institutes that are available with the JD program. And then within our dispute resolution programs, we do offer a certificate program, Masters in Dispute Resolution, LLM Dispute Resolution, and then the new LLM with the concentration in international commercial arbitration. And so those are all very specialized programs in dispute resolution. We are also very well known within the dispute resolution field. And so a lot of networking is available, as well as resources because of our reputation in the field. We are the #1 program in the US. So if you're interested in dispute resolution, that's our niche. If you're interested in environmental law, then I will have several suggestions for you. I mean, there's certainly ways to cater the program so you can use your electives. One of the unique components for Pepperdine is the fact that you can specialize in a particular area and then use your electives to qualify to sit for the bar for New York or California. So the fact that you have some flexibility with those elective courses is a good option. And why study at Pepperdine? Like Wake Forest, we also have a beautiful location. We're more on the beach, and then you'd have to drive if you wanted the mountain. And you'd have to drive if you wanted the city. But if you want beach, then we're a wonderful location. We have an established reputation in the field. We are a very practice-driven program, so we are not Socratic method. It's about learning the skills to negotiate, mediate, arbitrate. So we'll put you through a ton of simulated exercises. We'll have you take clinical courses where you're mediating cases in the courts. So it's all about getting you prepared. So by the time you graduate, you'll be already introduced to networks that can help create that sort of transition to a legal career. Creative scheduling, we have different format courses from 1-week intensives, 2-weekend courses, 15-week courses, which allow us to fly in faculty from across the nation, actually internationally as well, so you're learning from the people that practice dispute resolution. So now we will open it up for questions, either online or on-site, for those that have questions on the law practicing in the U.S. or law programs application process. So then the question for those online is if there's recommendations for new areas for international students studying in a JD or LLM program where their international law degree would be of increased value. I think that'll vary. I mean, for a lot of people that go through our program, they may go through the LLM or JD. Typically, the ones I see are the ones that go through the LLM degree and may work internationally. We had an attorney from Mexico that did an internship with the ICC in Paris. And because of that, his experience working internationally, his understanding of the different environments, they offered him a job. And so he ended up working with that area. And so some of the international opportunities available would value your international experience. I mean, if you're looking for a job in the U.S., that may be a different story because U.S. law firms know what to do with the JD. A specialized LLM, they may or may not know what to do. So then you would have to specifically target international law firms in the U.S. for them to value that. But it looks like Joe will have additions.
I was just going to add, because I had a chance to think While Sarah answered the question first, which is unfair. But I was thinking of a couple of examples, if I understand your question correctly. So we have this criminal law program, and we've gotten a fair amount of interest from countries in Latin America who are reforming their criminal justice system away from, in the direction of the U.S. system or based on the U.S. system. So they're going to a model of an adversary system with trials, more live presentation of evidence, and this is something they haven't done as much before. So there's an interest in learning how we do that in the States. I mean, they're teaching it in those countries, but the education abroad, the education in English may be of value to them. I've gotten some interest on this particular trip in how the U.S. does intellectual property law, because it's kind of unique, that they can sort of take that back here, and that's of value. One of the nice things about doing trips like this, because learning things like this, you learn things like this from people like you, actually, because I can say, well, we can teach you U.S. intellectual property law, but then you say to me, oh, well, that's important here in Seoul, and let me tell you why. So one of the nice things about trips like these is that we learn how the education we can give you is valuable to you in this particular market at this particular time.
I was just going to add, I actually had a meeting with an alumni, and she is actually practicing in China, but she does intellectual property law, as Joe mentioned. She's actually a partner now at one of the largest intellectual property firms in Shanghai. But when she was with us, she didn't focus all her energy in intellectual property. She took American law, she took American business law, and she took a class in criminal law too. So she kind of diversified. She didn't specialize necessarily, but what she was able to do is to take it back and say, I know American law, and that's why they employed her. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily a new specialization. I would say it's taking what you already know and then taking the advantage of U.S. law classes and then applying this. Any other questions? Any online? No other questions? Nope.
We were so thorough.
We were. Well, thank you all for coming tonight.
I was just wondering, U.S. law schools keep saying that they're looking for very diverse students for their entrance class. Could you explain a little bit more about diversity and what does it exactly mean?
The question is, U.S. law schools are always saying that they're looking for a diverse class. What does it exactly mean by diversity? And does that and does that include international students, and why? To answer that, yes. To answer yes, they are looking for international students. The reason why is that you bring a very unique perspective to the class. Because we teach via the Socratic method, and because you're learning from each other, not only from the professor, we need different opinions. We need different ideas so that you generate discussions, so that you can discuss everything. Without that diversity, you're going to have pretty much a very boring class. You're going to have all the same opinions. So as international students, you're bringing a very diverse perspective. You're bringing your law, your knowledge of your home country's law to the US. And the US students are learning from that. And we also have students from all over the world. Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, Kosovo. So for example, in a criminal law class at Wake, we have a Kosovo, an Afghanistan, and a Korean prosecutor. So sitting there listening to a criminal law class for the American students with these perspectives is they're learning, oh, that's how they do it there. Oh, I see now. I understand why, and that can help them understand US law too. So I think international students bring a large diversity to the class. With that, Joe has something to add too. Go ahead.
And I would just sort of echo that we want students from many different places. So as an international student, and I would suggest to you that when you're looking at programs, you find programs that have a diverse student body in the sense of students from many countries, not students from, like many students from the same country. I occasionally get asked, well, you have a lot of Korean students, right? I mean, I'll be able to hang out with Korean students, right? And I say, well, is that why you want to go to do you want to go to the United States to hang out with a bunch of Korean students, or do you want to come to the United States to have, an education in the U.S., an education in English, an education on U.S. law? So you want to strike a balance, from your perspective and from my perspective as an enrollment manager. You want to strike a balance. You want to have a healthy amount of international students in your classroom to enrich your community, to provide perspectives from all over the world on the topics that you're studying. But you want to have balance. You don't want to invite such a large number of students that it's a whole class of international students, right? I mean, one of the reasons why international students come abroad is to be in classes with U.S. students. And so I would say, at least in our program, you're going to be surrounded by New Yorkers, and New York's a very diverse place, but they will all have in common that they call New York home. Yep. Yeah, and I'm sure we all do something like that. When you're admitted to many law schools, including mine, I will give you reading suggestions, but also films. So for example, if English isn't your native language, a way that you can start to familiarize yourself with U.S. legal vocabulary is through a cinema. There are a lot of kind of neat American law films. There's a group of Russian lawyers that visited my law school not too long ago, and I asked them, what are the best Russian law films? And I was hoping they were going to tell me about the new Russian version of 12 Angry Men, but they said the best Russian law films are American law films. And so they gave us credit, but there are a lot of opportunities to pick up films and fiction, to help with your vocabulary. And then there's some reading that I would certainly give you, basic reading on, the basics of the U.S. legal system, the way that, what to expect in U.S. Education, things like that. And finally, at my school and at many of our schools, we do for 2 weeks before the rest of your classes is when you take the Introduction to the U.S. Legal System course. So it's kind of an intensive 2-week course that gets you in a position where when you get to those first classes, you're kind of more ready. That's what we do.
And I would say look around. There are a number of different programs at law schools that offer some sort of summer program or maybe some training program. That may be like a 2-week program. At Pepperdine, we have a 4-week legal English gateway program, so all admitted students are invited to come a month early, housing's included, and you kind of brush up on your languages and help prepare, get in the mode of LLM study. And I know there are a number of different institutions across the U.S. that are doing that. I'm actually seeing more and more pop up. So I've seen a couple new ones that haven't added. So check in the programs you're applying for. They may have a summer training program option for that. Any other questions? Well then, thank you guys. Thank you guys for coming and spending, I don't know what date, spending this evening here.
Tuesday. It's Tuesday.
Spending your wonderful Tuesday here. You could tell we're a little traveled. But our contact information is available here on screen, or for those online. We are very friendly people. Do not hesitate to contact us and ask us any questions. So, thank you.
Thank you.